Sorry, I'm not dressed. I'm Ken. I'm an alcoholic. I got the great pleasure of introducing my wife, the next speaker. Jamy and I met in the program, and we started our lives together in this program. Next Tuesday, we'll be married for 36 years. During the 36 years, I've watched Jamy grow and grow in this program. She has a lot of friends. I always tease her because she's going out to lunch all the time with her friends. But I do get that peace and quiet at home to watch my friends. And that's beautiful. So God works in mysterious ways all the time. Jamy takes this program to heart, and she's very passionate with this program. And she likes reaching out and helping other people. She even helps me at home when I do wrong. She lets me know about it. So I'm not going to say too much more because she told me not to lie up here. So, Jamy, come on up.
Okay, isn't he sweet? Maybe I'll keep him. Hi, everybody. My name's Jamy Olson, and I am an alcoholic. I'm very grateful to be here this afternoon and very grateful to be sober. And before I forget, I want to thank Marcia and Russ for asking me last year. They asked me to do this, and I was really hoping he forgot. And he didn't, but here we go. I have been at a couple events recently with a lot of real powerful women speaking. You're not getting one of those this afternoon. But I will tell you what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like today. My sobriety date is January 11th, 1980, and for that I'm extremely grateful. I'm going to share something out of the big book real quick. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. So I will now share my spiritual journey. And I'm going to tell you, because I thought this is an afterthought, that my spiritual journey was not always unicorns and sparkles and all that stuff. My spiritual journey has a lot of deep, dark things in there too, but I think that is what made me who I am today. You know, my lowest lows were what brought me into this program, and that's part of my spiritual journey. So here we go. The reasons I would have told you that I drank were that I was adopted, my parents got divorced, I went to a Catholic school, my father was an alcoholic, I was married twice, divorced once, and that was before I got sober. I had 2 kids, and ad infinitum. I mean, the list went on and on. I know today that the only reason I drank was the reason the book gives in the doctor's opinion. I like the effect produced by alcohol. It altered my perception of reality. I did not like living in reality. And I can go back to when I was a little kid. And I really was always trying to change what my surroundings were like so that I felt comfortable where I was. My mom was a single mom, and she did a wonderful job raising me. I cannot complain at all about the things that she did for me and my sister. She was great. I never did without. I would have wanted better, but I never did without. And she was my strongest supporter. She was always telling me that I was beautiful, I was smart, I could do anything I wanted to do. I mean, my upbringing had absolutely nothing to do with why I drank at all. I can't find anything. She sent my sister and I to a Catholic school. I did not like it. I did not feel I belonged. I was different. And my sister and I were just talking about this yesterday, is that we were adopted and from a divorced family back in the 70s. Not healthy if you're in a Catholic school. I hated it. And we weren't rich. And a lot of the kids that I went to school with had a little bit of money, and so it just always that feeling of not quite fitting in. Alcohol had always been in my home. My mother loved her wine after dinner, and I had an occasional sip of wine and booze, but I was bound and determined I was not going to become an alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic, and I wasn't going to be like him. And it wasn't what I had heard that he'd done as much it was the tone in my mother's voice when she told the stories of what he had done. And I never wanted anyone to talk about me that way. I just didn't. So I really didn't understand what an alcoholic was at that time, but I knew I wasn't going to be one. But by junior high, I was so wound up. I finally got to go to public school. Yay. Which that could be good or bad, But I got to go to public school. I was wound so tight, and the feelings of not belonging were still there. It was not the Catholic school that did that to me. I didn't know at the time. It was me doing that to me. And at that time, it was the hippie era. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I was all in. I thought this was great. I honestly didn't think the drugs I was doing at the time were bad. I had them under control. And when you're 15 years old, yeah, you kind of have a little more control over them because you're not using them all the time. And I can remember thinking that, this isn't bad, and it's not booze. I'm not getting drunk. It's okay. And and this is funny, what's really ironic is I remember my first drunk and my first blackout, and they both happened the same night. I had gone to I don't even remember how we ended up at this party that I thought was awful grown up, and I was I wrote down here, they even had hors d'oeuvres. I'm not kidding you. It was it was a head of cabbage, and they cubed ham and stuck them on toothpicks and had them all over this thing. That is the only thing I remember about that night. I cannot tell you anything else because what they had there was booze. And, well, I was a grown-up. I was going to drink. During that same period, I started hanging around with, there was a place, I'm from Bellevue, Washington, and there was a place in town that was a place where kids could go hang out. What it was where we sold drugs in the parking lot. They had counselors on staff. They had policemen coming in often, and I never understood why. Now I do. But I totally abused that system. Looking back on that today, they were like fish out of water at that time, trying to deal with the drug problem that was going on. And here we were out in the parking lot, selling drugs, getting high, drinking, doing all the things we weren't supposed to be doing there because you can't remember, I wasn't even 16 years old yet and doing this shit. I was, they didn't like us. And I was banned from there. I don't know. I just don't get it. But, they were, when I look back on it today, It doesn't even exist. I would love to make amends to the people there because, what they were doing was so important at that time, and I thought it was just a party place. That's all I did. So, anyway, one of the things they suggested at this time is my mom take me to a psychiatrist. So she did. And he said, I love this. I was living on the edge, and I kept looking over the edge, and one of these days I was going to fall off. Little did he know how true that was, because there did come a day when I did fall off. I told him he was full of it. I told my mom she was full of it, and I was never going to go back, and I didn't. I dropped out of school, I dropped out of school and started spending most of my days with my new boyfriend, who had already graduated. Yeah, and we had the party house. It was an old rundown farmhouse. I mean, this is going to take some of you people back. We had painted the walls purple, and all of the trim work was lime green. And I mean, the cops were always driving by there, and they had to know what was going on, I'm sure. They were probably just glad we weren't on the streets. And but we were out of control, totally out of control. And during that time period, I was picked up for shoplifting. I was taken down to the police station. I don't think I was charged, to be honest with you, because they let my mom take me home and told her that if I didn't straighten out, I was going to be pulled out of the house. And so I went home, and that night I went back to the house, my boyfriend's house. And so my mother, I don't know how she did this at the time, but she put my boyfriend and I on a plane to Reno, Nevada, with all the paperwork necessary so we could get married. I was 16 years old. And, at the time, this is what went through my mind. I'm a grown-up now. I have a husband. We're going to have an apartment. And things are going to be good. They'll be good. And my husband's father lived in California. So off we went to California. And we set up housekeeping. That's what people do, right? Now, we didn't have the connections, and there was no drugs. And in all honesty, he wasn't legal to buy booze at that time either. So, we tried. We tried our best, and I ended up pregnant. That was trying my best. And so at 17, I had my son. And I really tried. I really did. I wanted it to be a good life. I wanted that Donna Reed home that, fathers knows best. That's the life I wanted. Like I said, neither of us were using at the time. So it didn't last. He went back up to Washington, and I started hanging out with bikers. God only knows why I thought they were interesting, but they just, I don't know, there's a draw there. But, and I was bored and lonely, and I started partying all the time and entertaining, and I'm just going to use that term. I entertained a lot, and we drank a lot. And I drifted from relationship to relationship at that time. There's nothing tethering me down. My son certainly wasn't doing it. Anything I had learned growing up wasn't doing it. I just wanted to numb what was going on in here and in my soul. And I didn't know that at the time. I could not tell you that's what I was doing. That's what I was doing. And I drug my son along with me on that journey. And, to this day, I really regret that I had to do that, but I did that to 2 kids. I found myself always having to lower my standards to get what I needed. Now, I'm a female alcoholic. You just take it from there. I did a lot of things. And then I'd have to drink or use to numb the guilt, the shame, and the remorse I was feeling for what had just transpired in my life. the drugs and alcohol were doing for me what I could not do for myself, because I couldn't get rid of those feelings by myself. I didn't know how. And I never saw a connection between the drinking and the drugging and the behavior. None of that. It was just a big whirlwind. I had no clue. So I was living by myself at this time, and I found out that my first husband, who we were not divorced, had joined the Navy. And he was making some good money, and I wasn't. And I thought, maybe we should try it again. So I moved down to San Diego. I got an apartment, and we were going to live happily ever after. That was my plan, and it was a good one for about a couple weeks. But so we had an apartment, and he started bringing his friends over. And pretty soon, we were all partying again, and I was the party girl. I'd put my little boy to bed in the next room, and I was ready, willing, and able to do whatever it took to have a good time. And I did. And that's when I discovered that I was a wine connoisseur. Oh my God. Do you know that Annie Green Springs in Boone's Farm tastes like Kool-Aid? I swear to God. And you could drink a whole gob of it. And I found out, or I know now today what I know is they used to think it was real fun to watch me drink it. Excuse me. And, the group of guys that were hanging around, they didn't care if I was married or not. They'd get me drunk just to watch me get drunk. Probably to puke, too. I don't know. But anyway, we had a very ugly ending to that marriage. And I don't remember how it actually came up that we ended the relationship. But it ended up with my ex-husband getting discharged from the Navy, and his shipmates were told that my apartment was now off limits. So I had been banned by the Navy. Figure that one out. But there was a guy. I don't even know if the ink had dried on the paper of the divorce at the time or not. But there was this guy. And he bucked the system, and I just thought, you're pretty cool. Yeah, I like you. And, he wasn't too bad to look at either, so okay. And he loved to party and never, ever said I was drinking too much. Never. So he started hanging around. The ship moved up to Alameda, and he let me move with him, and I thought that was so nice. First we moved to Long Beach. That's right, I went to Long Beach first. That's where we decided to get married. And I don't quite remember how I trapped him into that, but I do know that there was some trapping involved. Because I thought, well, he's in the Navy, he's got good money, we'll be fine. And I remember Long Beach because that is where I celebrated my 21st birthday. Now, I should have seen this at the time, but I didn't. I spent the evening of my 21st birthday in this sleazy bar down the street from my apartment, trying all sorts of drinks out to find out what I could actually stomach. I did find a drink. It was a Tom Collins. It took me about a week or two longer to find out that I could drink 8 of them without throwing up. Now, that was very important. At least to me it was. I later learned what chemicals would allow me to drink longer and stay awake. So, the joys of outside issues, I used them to my advantage. I used them to continue drinking the way I wanted to drink and continue living the lifestyle I wanted to live. And I put a lot of work into it, but I wasn't an alcoholic. I really honestly didn't think anything was wrong with how I was behaving. Well, while I was in California, I got pregnant with my daughter, and we were one big, sick, alcoholic family. I really wanted to be a good wife and mother. I didn't know how to be a good wife and mother. I had no clue how people behaved. But when we moved for the next port that he was in, I was pregnant with my daughter, and there was a neighbor down the way that was also pregnant. And you know what? She drank. Yeah, and she smoked pot. And in fact, they had a pot plant growing in their window, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So, of course, why is it you gravitate? I gravitated this woman, and I thought, I'm not as bad as she is. I'm pregnant, but I'm not going to drink. I'm going to smoke pot, though. And, to this day, I do not know if the smoking I did when I was pregnant with my daughter contributed to some of the issues she has today. I personally believe it did. And I regret that decision, but I can't do anything about it. That was something I wish I could change. But anyway, my husband's time was up in the military. And guess where he's from? Omaha, Nebraska. I thought, Omaha? Yay! No one knows me. And I mean, come on, Omaha, that's got to be a deadbeat town, right? I'm not going to get in trouble in Omaha. So we packed up the kids in the car and we drove off to Omaha. I knew absolutely nobody. We got an apartment, had the 2 kids. I felt so alone and so isolated. He went back to his old friends and his partying and his, drinking and all that. It was lonely. But my neighbor, she knew all about drugs and she knew all about booze. And I thought, I like you, And I didn't have to drive anywhere. We were right next door to each other, so that worked perfect, and I was off to the races with that. We were, I really wish that I could say everything was great at our house, but it wasn't. I honestly believe that we were both good people, but drugs and alcohol ruled what happened within our home at all times. We were a young family. We didn't have a lot of money. So we did some extracurricular outside enterprises that are a little illegal, to say the least. And we ended up buying a home. But what was, I guess looking back on it, what would happen was that my husband worked nights. So I was in charge of the business at night. And I didn't want him to know how much I was smoking or drinking. So when he was at work and a friend would come over to purchase something, I just took a little off the top. And so I was okay. And of course, they were all guys. So I would convince them how bored and lonely I was. And why don't you sit down? Let's have a joint of that and a little drink. Made sense to me. Sometimes it went a little further than it should have, but most of the time it was okay. And while I was living in that house, I had met a few friends in the neighborhood, and they introduced me to how much fun you could have while hubby's at work if you went to the bar. Okay, sound good for me. But see, again, we were a young family. We didn't have a lot of money. What I learned is I never had to pay for more than the first drink, ever. I was a drinking female in a bar, and I left my morals at the door when I walked in that bar, period. And that's how I lived the last part of my drinking. Was going to the bar, drinking, paying what I needed to pay to get what I needed to get. When I was 25, we went to my husband's work Christmas party, and on the way home, he was pulled over for a DUI. Now, I didn't have a driver's license at age 25. I knew how to drive a car, I just never got a license. And so the cops, let me drive home, and he was taken to jail. I still don't understand why they let me drive home. That was totally wrong. But I wasn't drunk, so that was probably a big deal. See, when him and I went out, I didn't drink as much as I did when me and Mary went out, because I needed to watch what he was drinking. I got Ellen on it. Yeah, I had to make sure he wasn't getting real drunk or doing something real stupid. So anyway, we went to this Christmas party. He got pulled over. He was assigned a probation officer who strongly suggested that he go to treatment because it would look good. And I agreed. I mean, my God, the man's a drunk. Hello, don't you see? And so off he went to Epley. And I thought, this is going to be great. He's going to get sober. And our life is going to get better. Things will change. And, this is going to be great. Well, what they wanted me to do is to go through the family group. And that was going to start on a Monday. And of course, at that point, I was the good wife. He was the wrong one. I was the good one. And so I would do anything they told me. And they told me they didn't want me drinking or doing drugs the whole time of family treatment. Oh my God, really? Okay, that's what you want. I started it on Monday. I lasted till Friday. Thursday night, something happened. And you guys are going to think this is really nuts, but his work put money into our bank account and then took it out. And I had already spent the money. And I was freaking out. And I had no drugs or alcohol in my system for 4 days. And I broke down. And I will never forget this moment because I stood in the corner of my living room, tears streaming down my face, saying, God, I can't handle this. You have to do something. I was praying to a God I did not believe in. I didn't believe God existed, but I was praying to him. The next morning, I walked into the family group, and to this day, I have no clue why I even told these people that, because looking back, that was really stupid of me. I walked in and I said, I might have a drinking problem. Talk about God's grace. I didn't even believe in God, and he was already giving me this grace in my life. And I think it feels like it took them 2 seconds to get me up into the admissions office. I don't think it was that long. But anyway, I ended up in Epley Treatment Center. That was January 11th, 1980. And I consider that my sobriety date because that is the day I surrendered, not the day I quit drinking. That's the day I finally said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I believe that was the day I took the first step. And then my sobriety journey began. And that is what I want to talk about. It says in here, in the big book, if when you honestly want to, you can find you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. And if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will concur. And I walked into that treatment center honestly believing my problem was drugs and my husband. And so if we had any group meetings, I always introduced myself as an addict. I was an addict. That's why I was there. I was not an alcoholic. I was not going to be like my dad. I was not going to be like my husband, I just wasn't going to be that person. And what I learned after being around, I went through treatment, got out of treatment, went to meetings when I got out, and I always introduced myself as an addict, always. But I felt really uncomfortable because you guys weren't introducing yourself that way. You guys, I heard the term alcoholic addict, and I liked it. Didn't that sound cool? Two things. I'm a little better than you. That's where I was sick when I first got in the program. And what was funny is I heard a guy talk once. I wish I could even remember who he was, but what he said was, introducing yourself like an alcoholic addict is like saying you're a German Shepherd dog. Oh my God. No shit. Really? Well, that made sense to me. I mean, really, I loved it. I thought that was great. And I started to introduce myself as an alcoholic. And I don't want to forget that. Because until that moment happened for me, I really wasn't invested in this program. What I was invested in is fixing all the outside circumstances that I thought was ruining my life. But by admitting an alcoholic, all of a sudden I started hearing things that were making sense to me. I had a hard time with the unmanageability, but that started to make sense to me. Because now I was an alcoholic. Now your solution could be my solution. I didn't have to be on the outside looking in, I think a very important thing for me to remember, and I think I was probably about 8 or 9 months sober when I realized this, is that all that whole time that I was not admitting that I was an alcoholic, that I was an addict, I left alcohol sitting right there on the table. It was just sitting there. It was just waiting because I didn't have that problem. So at any time, if things got really bad, I could always pick up a drink. And knowing that today scares the hell out of me because I know too many people that have had that attitude and have picked up that drink. And I don't ever want to be there, to pick up that drink. That just scares the hell out of me. Because I don't know, I doubt I'd make it back. I'm too damn prideful to come back and say I slipped. So, yeah, it was real hard for me to go to the second part of the first step, which was the unmanageability. And I had to really listen to what other people were sharing at meetings to realize, yes, I did that. Yes, my life looks like that. Yes, I get that. And then it was one day, oh my God, you're unmanageable. That was the last thing I wanted. I was always trying to make my life fit into that perfect little world, and it wasn't, And today I have tools to repair my life, not Band-Aids for a temporary fix. And I thank you guys for that, because I needed that. Now, steps 2 and 3 were very hard for me. I came into the rooms believing there was no God and that only weak people needed a God. That was my thought. Today I know that's not true. I had turned my back on God very early in my life. And I know today that I was turning my back on my religion, not God. But I couldn't separate the two. And I needed to have a higher power in my life. I need it. So for more years than I care to admit, I would just ignore the word God or higher power in the big book. I just skip over it. We weren't going to do that. And I never made any effort to enlarge any type of spiritual condition for me. I didn't. It was just, I just didn't do it. I did believe that the second and third step worked for all of you. I saw it. You sit in the rooms, you can't miss it. It worked. But for me, that was a small start, as I believed it worked for you. And I think there's some place in the book where it talks about putting the key in the door and it just opens just a crack. And that was my crack. That little thing that it was okay if you believe in God. And that's great. But I did believe and trust in you. So I listened to what you had to say. I stopped arguing with you whenever you talked about God. I even stopped arguing with my ex-mother-in-law about God. And that was one of my favorite things to do. I swear, she was something else. But it was all baby steps, you know? It was just little pieces at a time. And again, longer than I care to admit, I came to a jumping off place in my sobriety where I started to wonder if this was all there was. I wanted more. I wanted more out of life. I wanted more out of my sobriety. And I had to start looking at my program and trying to figure out what was lacking. Something was missing. And, you know, it kept going back to that God word. And I'm going like, no. I know it's working for you, and that's great, but I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. But it worked for you guys. So I started working on, could there possibly be a connection with a higher power in my life? AA allowed me a God of my own understanding, and that was the beginning of my spiritual journey with my higher power. And it says the big book does not make, says that God does not make too hard terms for those who seek Him. And I believe that today. I firmly believe that because I don't even know what I was looking for. I don't even know what God was. I had never had a relationship with Him. But, you know, again, God's grace in my life. And I discovered one thing, and this is my opinion. So don't go running and telling anyone this is a rule. But I firmly believe that you don't need to have God to get sober. But you have to have God to stay sober and live happy and joyous. But you don't need Him to get sober. All you need to do is put your feet under the table and be willing. Just willing. Just allow it to happen. And it will happen. I can't imagine it not happening. So I did step 4 and 5 at the treatment center. And I felt I did a thorough job at the time, you know. I'll be honest with you. I thought they knew. And if I didn't write it down, they were going to call me on it. You know, I don't know where they got the information, but I thought they knew. Well, I would help. My ex-husband was on the floor below me. So maybe that's where I got that idea that he had told. I don't know. But I was really scared. I didn't know what would happen if I wasn't honest on that 4 steps. So I told him everything. And it really kind of felt good to barf it all out because it was making me sick. It really was. I have revisited the 4th and 5th steps many times in sobriety. Step 4 gave me the instructions on how to do step 10. And step 10 has many nights allowed me to sleep because I can get that in my head and take action on things that had happened during the day. There have been many times things in my life have cropped up, and I mean, this is stupid. Sometimes watching a movie, and I'll go, oh my God, I did that. Oh my God, I need to tell somebody I did that. You know, and going back to those type of things. So I got all the instructions. Step 4 gave them all. And of course, I had to do the 5th step at a treatment center with a chaplain. And to this day, I could not tell you who he was, but he wasn't Father Shortley, and I was grateful for that because I don't know any of you old timers knew who Father Shortley was, but he was this little, and he was a wrestler, and he was scary, and I didn't want him to listen to it. But yeah, it was something I did out of fear. It wasn't because I thought, oh, I'm going to feel so much better when I do this. It was because I was scared to death what would happen if I didn't do it. And I don't know where that feeling came from, but I thank God I had it because it allowed me to do that. When I got out at the treatment center, I was told to go to AA meetings and get a sponsor. Oh, imagine that. I was too scared not to, so I did. I didn't pick the best sponsor, and I sometimes went to AA meetings just because it wasn't being at home. I was still living with my husband, and he got out of treatment and immediately went back to using. So it was chaotic at home, and I wasn't comfortable in that chaos, but at meetings I could relax. So I went to a lot of meetings. I used to hang out at the Miller Club a lot in the very beginning. And I began to work at that time on 6 and 7 because somebody suggested it. Not because I wanted to do it. Somebody suggested it, so I did. And I looked at it because I was getting really uncomfortable with some of the stuff I was doing and some of the things that I was thinking. And they suggested that those could possibly be your character defects, and perhaps you need to do something about them. And you know what? I've been doing 6 and 7 ever since. Those puppies don't go away. It's like they're latched to you. And I need to stay very vigilant about working those 2 steps because it never says in the book that they're going to go away and never come back. They just say you can ask your higher power to take them away, and he will for that day. Then you find out 2 days later something else happens and the same damn defect is right by your side. Just wait, no, come on, let me do it. You know? So I do work that a lot. And it's important for me also to remember that my serenity and my sobriety is contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And this is so funny because I had a guy tell me once, years into sobriety. Isn't it amazing how everything I've learned has been years into sobriety? But this guy told me, do you know what they said at a meeting I went to last night? And I said, no, what'd they say? And he said, do you know it says it's not, that it's contingent on the maintenance of your spiritual condition? He said, the word maintenance is in there. And I thought, oh, does that mean I got to do something? Well, okay. But it made sense, you know. If I don't maintain my spiritual condition, I will return to the person I was when I came into the rooms. And I was a mean, cruel, miserable person. And I don't want to be that person anymore. You know, I just don't want to be that person anymore. When I got home from treatment, I was going to a meeting where somebody suggested to me it might be a real good idea that I continue the step work. I thought, well, you know, I've already done 6 and 7. He said, well, what about 8 and 9? So I had to make the list because I had burnt my 4th step, and I had to, I started with my kids, my husband, and close relatives. I did a lot of living amends because the kids were harder to do. You couldn't go up to them and say, well, I left you all alone, unattended. Well, I was down the street getting drunk. Or you remember Mommy's glass when she was doing Cub Scouts? That wasn't Kool-Aid. And we did come out of the bedroom smelling a little funny, but, you know, I didn't know how to do that, but I was learning how to be a better person, and I could be a better mom, and I could be involved in what they were doing. But I'll be honest with you, I did not realize how deep some of the damage I had done to my kids was. And, you know, that was hard. That was real hard to take a good look at all that. I mean, and you guys are going to think this is stupid. This is something I tell at meetings all the time. My son loved Legos. And I would go by his room and he'd have Legos all over the floor and be building something, but he was nowhere to be seen. So I'd go pick them all up and put them in the closet. And he'd come up to me and go, Mom, I was making something. And you put it away. And that was the first time I realized how some of my actions could really hurt important parts of them growing up. Because when I was using, I never saw that. So, yeah, I learned a lot when I got sober. The hard way, most of it. But I want to share a story with you. And I always share this when I talk about the 8th and 9th step. I always thought at first that the 9th step was going to make me feel better. That I would go up to someone and say, okay, I did this and I was drinking and wasn't that horrible. And, I would have that immediately lifted off from my shoulders because you would tell me what I had to do to make it better. And I would just go skipping down the road of sobriety, all happy-go-lucky, because it's been taken care of. I had an interesting experience. My first husband sent me a letter out of the blue. I don't even know how he found my address. I think he got a hold of my mother or something. And he sent me a letter. And this letter started out with, I hope things are going well. I am now a member of a recovery program or 12-step program. I forget how he put it. And one of the things that is required of me to do is to make amends for how I treated you when we were married. Oh my God. It wasn't all me. See, all this time I thought it was me. I thought that I wasn't the wife I should have been. I wasn't the mother I should have been. I wasn't the human I should have been. And that was part of the problem. But what it did for me was it made me whole again. In that relationship today, even though I have not talked to him since then, but what happened was I became whole again. He made amends. He made me whole again. And when I look at the amends process as making another human being whole again, isn't that what I wanted? I just wanted you to be okay again. I wanted to repair the damage I had done. It's not about, oh, I'm going to walk away and feel so much better and I won't drink now. It's that I want to make you better. I want to do whatever I need to do to make this whole again, or as close to whole as you can get. You can't do it perfectly, but, that was very important for me, very important for me. And the next 3 steps, the growth steps, I love those. I hate people call them maintenance steps because I want to grow. I don't want to stay right where I'm at today. I want to grow. And that's 10, 11, and 12. Step 10 allows me to continue keeping my side of the street clean. We all know that. Thanks to the 4th step, I know how to do that today. I know what I'm looking for most of the time. And I make every attempt to try to keep my side of the street clean. I'm far from perfect. I'm very good at rationalizing and justifying my behavior. I learned that when I was doing a 4-step. So a daily 10th step is very important to my sobriety and my serenity. It allows me to stop making the same mistakes over and over again. For me, a big part of step 10 is sharing it with another person. It talks about that in the book. I, more often than not, do end up sharing it. And it's probably some people get really sick of listening to me because they're probably really stupid things like, okay, if that's that important to you, that's fine, I'll listen to you. But it's really important for me because, and I'll tell you this, I never understood in the 4th step why we had to tell another human, or in the 5th step why we had to tell another human being, because I always figure, well, God knows what I did. Why do I have to tell a chaplain? That's kind of stupid. God and I can take care of this. We got it. I am a rationalizer and a justifier. And I will bullshit God, let me tell you. Because my thing would be, well, I did this to this other person and I really hurt their feelings. But And that's how my conversations with God goes. But when I tell you that, I can even put the word but in there, and you'll go, I don't think that's really quite how that works. Let's reframe that and look at it this way. So all I know today is that if I do not keep my soul clean, I just distance myself from higher power. And it took me so long to start a connection with a higher power that I don't want to do that. Speaking of my higher power, step 11 was kind of tough for me. I came into AA with Catholic religion and a school background. That was not compatible with drinking, so I shut that part of my life down. By the time I got into the program, there's no relationship whatsoever with God. It did not serve how I was living when I was drinking, so there's nothing there. But I ingrained that so much in my life that it was hard to rebuild any relationship. It was really hard. Many years in sobriety, I hit a brick wall. I literally got to that jumping off place, and I wondered if that's all there was. If this is all there is, and I was leading a good life at this point, but if that's all there is, I don't know. It just wasn't enough. I wasn't feeding my soul enough, I guess. And I use the term soul a lot because I don't know what else to call it. Everything, like I said, everything was doing good, but something was missing. And to this day, I have no idea why I thought God was the answer. I do not know, because it was so far away from what I wanted and what I thought and what I felt. But that everything I looked at, everything I examined, every meeting I went to, everyone I talked to, it all seemed to come back to this God thing, And it's like, but I don't even know how to talk to him. My prayers were the Our Father and the Hail Mary. And I'm not really sure either of those ever really helped me. But I kept looking around. And you guys all seemed to have something that was working in your life. And it talks in the book about, all you have to do is seek. And he doesn't make too hard terms. And what I interpret that for me, was he showed me the way. Now, I am not super religious, I will tell you that. I still don't go to church. But I'm slowly learning how to talk to my higher power. And what's more important, I'm listening. I'm recognizing things in my life today that I believe, and this is just me, but I believe that God is talking to me in his own way. Whatever God is. It could be Buddha, it could be, I don't care. All I know is, and I have a girlfriend, and I love this. She says God is just a placeholder. It's an easy word to use for something greater than yourself. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I can use God. I can use that word. But today I have something in my soul that I don't want to give up. And I firmly believe that is my connection with my higher power. Once I opened that door a little more and I was, I could read the word God in the book. That was kind of nice. Things made sense all of a sudden. But I started to learn more about what a higher power is. And I think it was Jeff was saying, write the list of what God is. Someone told me to write a list of what you are looking for in a friend. What would be the perfect friend? And so I wrote it, and they said, that is your God. That's your higher power. And I still carry that around in my big book because that's so important to me today to remember. That is my God. And you guys gave me that because you said, God of my understanding. And my understanding was a lot different from what I was raised to believe in. And I'm so grateful for that. let's see. Step 12 tells me that I have changed. They call it a spiritual awakening. I like that. From working the steps, and I need to carry this message. And to me, that means I have to take these principles and practice them everywhere, not just AA meetings, in traffic, the grocery store, at home, and with all people, not just the people in AA. That can be hard sometimes because there's some idiots out there. It's not easy, I tell you. Things don't always go my way. And my reaction is to take it out on the people around me, and that could be the clerk at the store, that could be the guy in traffic in front of me. Sometimes it's just through not taking the extra step to do the next right thing. So, step 12 is not always about, working with others as far as giving them the program, but working with others as being a human being towards other people. And that's what I like to look at it. And I have here, now I tell how AA was there for Henry. I have a 20-year-old grandson, and he's 21 now. He turned 21. And Henry was drunk calling me. And he's drunk calling his mother, and his mother was in a fit. So she had him call me in the he called me in the middle of my Wednesday morning meeting. I mean, my God, and the kid's still drunk, and he's crying. And what I want to share here is I couldn't help him. I took him to a meeting that night and introduced him to a guy that's kind of around his age. And he ended up moving back with his mother and in Valley, and I said, you are in walking distance of the Valley Club. I said, why don't you go there? And I let him go. And I let you guys take him because I couldn't help him. I'm a grandma, I want to make them all better and take away all the icky stuff. And I can't do that. Now, Henry's life improved a little bit. He's living with his mother now. He's got a job at Dollar General. And he's got a little bit of money. So things are looking up. So AA kind of got pushed to the side. But what I know today is that he knows where that meeting is. And if he starts drinking again, I know the people there will pick him up and help him. Because I can't. I can't do it. And I also want to share another story, which is nothing to do with the steps. It's to do with one of the traditions. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I want you guys to realize how important anonymity can be to somebody. Because I have broken it before with people. But when I got out of treatment and my husband got out of treatment, I had gone to this meeting. And at this meeting was his probation officer. And I knew this. I knew who she was. And I knew what AA said, that what's said here stays here. And I was young in the program, and I tended to throw up a lot at meetings with, do you know what he did to me this time, and you know what he's doing this time, and my life's all crappy, and what am I going to do? And she went back and told him that, I hear you're not doing real good, and I hear you're using again. And needless to say, that did not go over well in our house. And I will never forget the feeling I had at that moment. Because what I thought was, do I really want to stay in an organization I can't trust? I'm supposed to trust these people. And I don't know why. And to this day, again, God's grace in my life. Because what I realized at that time was that she was human. She was an alcoholic just like me. That's why she was at the meetings. She made a very bad mistake, but my sobriety did not need to rest on her behavior. My sobriety, and I've heard this before, my sobriety must have a life of its own. And I need to build that, not the resentment I was carrying towards her. We got over the whole thing at my house. We ended up getting a divorce. That were good. But anyway, the book tells me that I need to pick up the kit of spiritual tools laid at my feet. What does that look like in my life today? What's my spiritual tools? I go to meetings. I usually go to 6 a week. I know that's a little much, but I love it. And I have the time. I can do that. I do some live and I do 2 Zoom. And I love all of them. I wouldn't trade any of them. I hate to let go of any of them because I just love them. Zoom saved my life during COVID because I was left alone with this and it was going in really strange places. So, I know some people aren't big fans of Zoom, but I am. I've made some good friends on there. People I normally wouldn't have met if it hadn't been that. So I'm grateful to have those people in my life today. Meetings keep me in the sobriety loop. When I go to meetings, I hear and see things that remind me what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. So it keeps me alive in that respect. Sponsorship is another tool, and I gain from both sides of sponsorship. I gain from being a sponsor, and I gain from sponsoring other people. Today, when I'm walking through the steps of the newcomer, it keeps the program alive in me. And I'm doing that with a girl right now, and it does. I mean, yeah, it's an hour on Sunday that we sit down and go through the steps, but, it keeps it alive. It reminds me why I'm here. It reminds me what I need to be doing that maybe I'm not doing. So, working with newcomers is great. I love going to events like this. It's one of our favorite things. My husband loves them too. It strengthens my bond with the fellowship. It makes me remember where I belong. And I try to stay as active as possible in the groups I attend, whether it's making coffee, chairing a meeting, bringing the topic. I want to do everything I can to make sure my group is there and welcoming for the newcomer, because I never know when they're going to walk in the door, and it could be my grandson, and damn it, I want you to be there for him. And healthy. I want healthy AA. I try to stay active in service work, but after a phone call yesterday, I'm really wondering how active I am in this service thing, because the person I was talking to is very active. It kind of made me feel a little insecure about what I've been doing. But I've had a few positions at the district level, GSR, treasurer, grapevine rep. It always makes me feel like I'm playing a part in making sure that AA stays healthy. And that's a big thing for me. AA was healthy when I walked into these rooms. I want it just as healthy when the next person walks in. I love learning about the history. I really love that. I love workshops where you can learn about history and other things. I love speaker meetings because then I shut up long enough to listen and not have to worry about what I'm going to say next. And I love reading. And I read conference approved literature and non-conference approved literature. There are so many tools out there to make available that, and I don't think I got sober to not be able to tell bullshit from fact when I'm reading the non-conference approved. So I know that how everything, I love to know how everything came together and the people who helped bring it all together. This program's a miracle. And I know there are so many other tools out there, and all I have to do is pick them up. And I can, as the book says, be rocketed into the fourth dimension, because I think it's out there. I really do. And I think that I have only scratched the surface of what there is to learn in my sobriety and with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what's my personal life today like? Well, I've had two very good jobs since I got sober. I'm retired now. I never worked outside the home when I was drinking because your job was to take care of me. I thought that made sense. And but I received so much when I got out there and made so many friends that I still have today from working. Um, I raised three kids. They're all on their own now, thank God. They're all living their best lives, and I don't have to force them to live what I think that looks like today. It's their lives. And the program gave me the ability to look at that. I have beautiful grandkids, but don't all of us grandparents have beautiful grandkids? And I have three great grandchildren, and one of them is actually in Nebraska, and he's only 2 months old, and I'm just loving him to death. It's just wonderful. I get to pursue interests that I truly enjoy because today I know the things that I love to do and I'm passionate about. When I was drinking, I was so dulled I couldn't told you what I liked. Um, let's see. And I'd be able to give back to the community that helped me when I was drowning. I do some things today, community work that I love. I just totally love it. Husband's not so proud of it because I volunteer at the Humane Society and I want a dog, and he doesn't. So we kind of go back and forth. I keep showing him the pictures, but it's not working yet. Speaking of my husband, like he mentioned, we will be celebrating our 36-year anniversary. We met at my home group. He has never seen me drunk. I don't think he would have liked me when I was drinking. But to have somebody in your life to share your journey with, I couldn't have been more blessed. I never thought that would happen. Of course, I never went into a relationship as an adult either. I always went in as a sick individual. We love going to AA events like this. We love roundups. We love discussing what we hear at these events on the way home. There's just so much. Right now, we're in the planning stages for the AA International. I am so excited. It's in Vancouver. My sister lives in Vancouver. I haven't seen her and it had to be close to 20 years. And I get to go see my sister and do AA. I mean, bonus. I get to do both. But I'm so fortunate to be able to do all that. Everything hasn't been all butterflies and spring sparkles, like I said. I have had the kids mess up their lives. I've been through divorces, sicknesses. Both my husband and I had cancer the last couple of years. Deaths. We've lost our parents now. But through it all, I have never felt alone like I did the night before I went into treatment. I have been given the tools to live life on life's terms instead of fighting it all the way. This means the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I couldn't have done it without the program and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for that, I am extremely grateful. And that's it.